Welcome to the Nerd Party.
They can travel anywhere in time and space.
Right. This is going to be fun.
Off we go into time and space.
Welcome to Time and Space, the Nerd Party's dedicated Doctor Who podcast. I'm Jessica Nunn.
And I'm her husband and co-host, Phillip Gilfus.
So what have we been up to this week, darling?
Busy, but nothing in particular.
Yeah, just sort of chilling.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll have free time coming up, but eventually looking forward to getting back on our 11th Doctor rewatch.
Oh gosh, it's been ages.
I know, yeah. And then we're going to continue our 3rd Doctor watch. We'll rewatch the second series start of Jon Pertwee as the 3rd Doctor, the first appearance of Jo, the first appearance of the Master. We've all seen that, the Terror of the Autons with scary clay monsters and all that. So we can, half watch it. But
and it's April, so we also have to do 4th Doctor stuff, right?
So we're booked.
Yeah, we are booked solid. Don't give us television recommendations this month, please.
Well, is there any, how's your... What are you currently reading? I know it's nothing Doctor Who related. Are you reading anything currently?
Dribs and drabs.
Because I know you have various Doctor Who or Torchwood or whatever somewhere in your back catalog. So 2 weeks ago, we did our 3rd Doctor talk because it was March.
Yes.
But we sort of did some random Jon Pertwee stuff. Not necessarily just the 3rd Doctor, but some of that as well.
And in some cases, really random Jon Pertwee.
Yeah, so today we're just going to do some generic Pertwee talk. Nothing in particular. So, one documentary that we watched that was available on the YouTube was... Yeah, it's a documentary called Reverse the Polarity, and we'll post that link in the show notes. But I'll just read a quick synopsis here. On the 20th of March, 1992, Jon Pertwee spoke candidly to Liam Michael Rudin, if I'm saying that name correctly, about his life in show business. And Jon was 73 at the time, and they followed him around Edinburgh Hotel as he did a press call, did a buffet lunch, met with some fans, because it was sort of the release of 3rd Doctor, Jon Pertwee years kind of videotape thing. What would you sort of think of just seeing Jon Pertwee sort of in real life?
Yeah, I think that was talking about the idea that Pertwee was Pertwee as a doctor. Right. Which seemed pretty clear to me in this, this sort of highlighted that he was just the doctor doing, normal everyday Pertwee things, but the doctor. Right. Mostly.
So he sort of seemed like the same person you've seen.
Yes.
As the character.
Yes. Although lots of interesting, you get to see some of the comedy stuff in the interview, like he can't do things, he can't talk to people without doing impersonations or, things like that constant sort of on the go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I enjoyed sort of hearing different tales about the hotel he was at. He remembered being a young man in the Navy. Told an interesting story about it was during the war, or World War II. I should specify because he talked about the blackout years.
And it being pitch dark and losing his hat.
Yeah,
and then finding it.
Yeah,
these are things.
Yeah, but it is interesting to sort of think of him being of that time, of that generation, because. What little I know of the man, he doesn't necessarily seem any particular old fuddy-duddy, in his own way, I suppose, but, it's, as a World War II vet in that generation, he still seems pretty interesting.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and I thoroughly enjoyed getting to see Edinburgh.
Yeah, and it was sort of also interesting to see, because I'm sure... even back then, in the 90s, just doing the fan events and something, I'm sure it can not always be the most interesting thing in the world, signing people stuff or whatever. But he seemed to, enjoy it as much as he could be.
Yes, and you could see him putting it on, stepping out of the TARDIS and posing in front of the TARDIS. And it's one of the things that you see in so many of the Doctors is that willingness, the understanding that role is a little bit for life. Right. Whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. With the Marvel movies coming out, it's not a dissimilar you're just always going to be that character.
Yeah,
no matter what other brilliant things you do.
Mm-hmm. It'll be the first line on the obituary.
Yes.
Yeah, I did like his, because I had heard it. Of course, I've forgotten it, though. But him being told that there were police boxes. He's like, there's no police boxes. He's like, there are in Edinburgh.
Yeah. Yes, not anymore.
Yes.
That I remember, anyway.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, of course, they're different looking, of course, but still. Yeah.
Bigger on the outside, strangely
It
enough.
did look. And one of the things about this sort of documentary, if you will, is that there's a lot of interviews with Richard Franklin, who played Captain Mike Yates of the unit, who we actually will meet as we begin the second series, because he was not in the first series.
Oh, okay, good. Because I kept trying to figure out which one he was, and I couldn't find his face in the old man that they were interviewing. So that helps to know that, I wasn't expected to.
Yeah, we've seen one or two serials, but, I know it's all a little bit spotty now that we're watching it in order. Hopefully it'll all make a little more sense. But anyway, it was interesting to sort of hear about his recollections of working with John and working on that during that time. And
the idea that Jon Pertwee never had any intention of retiring.
Right. Yeah, he seemed aghast about the whole thought. What else would I do?
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is interesting.
And it's also interesting to hear, I think, with Richard Franklin, he talked about how he and Manning, Joe Grant, Katie, yes, sort of had some chemistry going on. So,
yes, although Katie Manning apparently blind as a bat.
Yes, that was an interesting thing we learned throughout a lot of this stuff. That apparently, yes,
and she didn't wear her glasses as Joe, and contact lenses didn't exist. I don't know,
or who knows? Right.
Yeah. So anyway, she would have her glasses on and figure out where she needed to go and then take them off and just sort of stumble through. And that's one of the reasons that the Doctor and Joe were so tactile, because Jon Pertwee's leading her around the set.
Yeah, like John was basically saying she's up for anything. It's because she can't see what the heck we're doing. Yeah. So, in a plane, in a thing, she doesn't know. She's just one foot in front of her. Yeah. I think it was interesting to see sort of his energy and his interest, because like all folks, when you get older, you do like to talk about the old days, but I still think he was definitely engaged, someone you could hang out with.
Yes, and very proactive about his career.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about taking, and we're going to talk about Worzel coming up, but he talked about taking that concept or first script or whatever and being like, here's your new show, and the television station was like, no. And so then he goes to another place and he's like, aren't you lucky they turned it down, here's your new show, and they're like, I don't know. But then he apparently did that for 10 years, but we're going to come to that.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that he is always hustling, that he does want to be a working actor, and I forget why, we may have learned, or maybe we didn't learn why he gave up being Doctor Who. I assume it was just
I don't remember them talking about it much.
I assumed it was just I've done my time. Because there's sort of, and I feel like I've heard this, and maybe I've just made it up, sort of like the George Washington precedent about 2 terms, but I think there's the Pat Troughton precedent, where Pat, I think, sort of basically would tell all the other actors, you probably just want to do 3 years.
Although Pertwee does 4, right? I was thinking that was what they just said.
Maybe.
On the YouTube that we were watching, is 4 years as the Doctor. But that idea that don't wear out your welcome,
right?
I guess.
And also, you don't, every actor, well, I say every actor, but of course the premise is you don't want to be typecast in that role.
Yeah, and I think also you don't want the Doctor to be typecast as you. Mm-hmm. If you run too long...
Tom Baker.
Then it makes it really hard to imagine the new guy or gal, as the case may be.
And I think that was, it'll be interesting when we talk Tom Baker and the 4th Doctor, who both for good and for ill was the Doctor for a long time, and whether that hurt, say, Peter when he took over for the 5th Doctor, because that was sort of a big scarf to fill. And
as it were.
Yes, and so that was sort of an interesting thing. But anyway, not that I'm an expert, but it was interesting sort of learning about... Richard Franklin was talking about Captain Yates, I think one of the first times he met John, and, they're talking about, John's like, well, what have you done? And then he's like, oh, yeah, I've done on radio. Like, our radio's really good, you should do it.
Yes,
and then he's like...
and he had done, 20 years of radio before Doctor Who.
So, but knowing that John's history was predominantly the radio and forget what it's called, the Navy Lark or whatever.
Teaching grandma to suck eggs, I think, is the common phrase for that. Is that a phrase you know?
No.
Okay.
But in the Navy radio show, comedy show that he was on, and that he came from a comedic background. I'm sure we had talked before.
Yeah, because it had sort of surprised me, but very much physical comedy.
And a voice guy.
Yeah.
And what'd you think about sort of hearing from the fans on the coast for some bizarre reason?
the fans on the beach of Brighton.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind, obviously, that I'm using the word beach in quotation marks. Mm-hmm. And as far as Brighton goes, yeah, weren't they nerdy?
Yes. Yes, they were. And it was interesting. I was trying to remember, because the way the documentary worked, it's out of my head, maybe you remember. It was something like where Jon was talking about one of the serials or episodes he did, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I hated this one. And the fan's like, my favorite is when Jon did this part, because he seemed to be really good at it.
Yeah.
I forget what that was, but I just thought that was a funny, or unintentionally, I assume, cross-section there. But anyway. Well, another YouTube, if you will, documentary is the Doctor Who at 40. This was, I forget what year this was, but it basically was, whatever.
40th anniversary,
very easy.
I'm guessing. Not that easy, but the 40th
yes, it is.
anniversary.
1963 plus 40.
Oh, yeah. That's
it's very easy. 2000.
1910-3.
What is wrong with you? So anyway, 2003.
Okay, in colloquial terms.
Year of our Lord, Anno Domini. But this is one I'd seen before. Basically, this is when it was, TV thing, obviously, where they would show the different episodes sort of rated from fans for each Doctor.
Yes.
So they had little snippets for each Doctor, and so we watched a little bit. It was interesting to sort of see a little bit more interviews with the companions. So, for instance, we saw Liz Sladen, Sarah Jane, of course. And
who we always love.
And Katie Manning as Jo Grant.
Who I'm becoming quite fond of.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting as we see her more.
She makes me giggle.
And then Nick Courtney, of course, is from the Brigadier.
Yes, who I was not sure necessarily liked Jon Pertwee all that much. I'm not sure.
Oh, I think what I think was interesting about Nick that they keep talking about is that it sounded like Jon and the crew, whether it was him and Katie or him and Liz or him and all the other unit crew. They basically like to have a lot of fun, because Jon said something about, like, the producers would be like, oh, you aren't taking this seriously, and Jon, being, of course, a very adult actor, would be like, no, we take this very seriously. But, we have fun when you say cut, and when you say action, we'll take it seriously. But it just seemed like Nick, they were always trying to break him and never could. Because talk about like actors who are themselves. It seems Nick is a bit of a brigadier as well.
Yes, quite possibly. Not the eye patch brigadier either.
Though he did enjoy playing that apparently.
Yeah, well, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
But yeah, that was sort of interesting to hear from them. And you got a little bit of the producers. So I'm not great with names, folks, so you can yell at me, listeners. But the first producer of the Third Doctor, who was only there for a short time, and I don't know if it was true, but they were telling Jon, I think maybe in the first documentary, that maybe he was cast for more of a comedic feel for the Doctor. And they said, what was he going to play? He's going to play an instrument, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. What was it?
Because they said since Pat had played the recorder, they were going to have him. Was it a guitar or what? I forget what it was.
Maybe, which they will not bring back until the 12th Doctor.
So yeah, so I thought that would.
Yeah, yes, it was a guitar, and because Jon Pertwee was also a folk singer a little bit, which we didn't find anything about in our Jon Pertwee deep dive.
He did write. Well, I don't know if he wrote it, but he at least performed, of course, one of the songs from the musical, the kids show.
Oh, yes.
And so we'll have to look that up later. But
yeah,
apparently there's a Worzel
it's all
song.
very weird. Yeah. But yes, so the idea being, maybe he would be sort of folk singer-esque, which...
Yeah.
Let's all have a moment and picture who Jon Pertwee is as the Doctor and who he might have been if he had made him folk
the comedic singer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
It was funny, and of course, I mean, he can say this so many years later, but Jon was like, oh, well, if he had done that, I would have quit, I'm like, sure you would have. But anyway.
Yeah.
It was sort of, and then with Barry Letts, I guess, who was the producer for all the Third Doctor time, and then Terrence Dicks, who was the script supervisor, or whatever the terms were. Mm. But anyway, those were sort of the two people who dealt with John, at least for, as the showrunner's head shed, whatever you want to call it, part, the non-actor part, the writer's part. So, but it was interesting to hear that, it sounded like, John, knew what he wanted. I don't know if they said he was difficult, but, that I guess at times he was, said his opinion.
Knew what he wanted.
Yeah.
Didn't always get his way. And
right.
Maybe that's, but was not afraid to be like, this is how we should do it. And then they were not afraid to say, stay in your lane.
Yeah. So, but that's good. I mean, you certainly, and it'd be interesting how long it took John to feel like he knew the character of what, so when he can say, like, I don't think the Doctor would say this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, to settle in But that's true, isn't it? It takes people a while to figure out their voice.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if someone had a comment about how the first series wasn't. I guess maybe it was more the comic stuff that they thought was, would settle down or would go away or something. You had the I know what it. Yeah, because I think that was it. Was I was thinking about the fan was talking about how with John singing in the shower in the first serial
and the wheelchair.
And John's like, oh no.
Yeah, it's quite enough of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
But speaking of Pertwee's comedy appeal...
So, yeah, this other side of him that apparently is if you know Jon Pertwee as the Doctor, that's probably just either the first or second thing in the obituary.
Yeah.
It's actually Worzel Gummidge is also what he's very much known for.
Yes, a Scarecrow character.
Yeah.
Which he did for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And it was on ITV for the most part, and it began in 1979, and it was 4 series in the UK, and the rest were in New Zealand. And it was a staged musical as well for a short time on the West End and other locations.
Obviously, with the entire original cast, right?
Yes, and of course the love interest might be the wrong word, but the love interest of the show. Aunt Sally is played by
Una Stubbs,
who we know mostly from
Sherlock,
as oh lordy, I should really know her name, as the landlady.
Yes.
Gosh, I can't believe I don't know the character's name. I should know it.
Mrs. something, I'm sure.
Yes, but anyway. So yeah, this was
that was kind of cool because you recognized her first, and then you were like, "Guess who that is?" And as soon as she opened her mouth, I was like, It's Una Stubbs. Of course it is.
Because I remember we stumbled upon her in one of your favorite Big Finish productions of the Eighth Doctor.
Oh, yeah. She's in the Glam Rock one. I'd forgotten about that.
Whatever, as the waitress or whatever she was.
Who turns out to be Lucy's aunt or something.
Something, I don't know.
Yeah, that was some sort of weird thing. So we like a little bit of Una Stubbs. This whole Worzel Gummidge thing?
Yeah, so
boy, that's weird.
Yeah, so we ended up watching an episode. I'm trying to remember. It was from the first series.
The marriage.
It was, so we actually watched the last episode from Series 2, The Scarecrow Wedding, which was on February 24th, 1980, before I was even born.
Look at there.
Yes, and so this was just sort of, was the only one I could find. I was trying to find the first episode, but I couldn't find it online. So we watched that. And what did you think of that bit of children's programming?
That was weird as hell. So weird. I am surprised that there are so many normal British people walking around who were exposed for 4 years or whatever to Worzel Gummidge. That was weird. Mm-hmm. What did you think?
Yeah, well, for one thing, because you watch the Third Doctor, and maybe it's just the tuft of gray hair. He seems older, not old, but older. And so to watch this, which was later, obviously post Doctor Who, he almost seems younger.
Yeah,
and I know it's just the makeup, probably.
It's the makeup and it's the physicality.
Yes.
I mean, he's so Matt Smith floppy.
Yeah.
In this because he's a scarecrow.
Yeah.
And he has a prosthetic nose and hay everywhere. And then they do, spoiler alert, if you've not seen this particular episode of Worzel Gummidge, spoiler alert, they have a dance party at the end of the episode and everyone does a choreographed performance.
Yes.
Which is weird as hell.
I mean, I can see it as, it's obviously very much a children's show, though. I think when they were talking about John, he also said adults like, I don't know if he was just saying that, but he was sort of very defensive about, well, adults liked it as well.
I think it would have scared me, though. I mean, it's not Sesame Street.
I mean, maybe it helped if you knew the story. Like, in other words, it's based on a children's story.
book.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
So it's sort of come to life, like maybe if like there was a Raggedy Ann and Andy or something,
But a live action version.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Which again sounds terrifying.
Because there's a lot of subtle things. Again, having only just watched one episode, but it's almost a little Calvin and Hobbes in that we only see the children interacting. So is it like this sort of land of make believe?
Right. We only see the children interacting with all of these scary characters, strange and unusual characters, including a young Barbara Windsor, which British fans will know from one of the soaps. I can't remember which one it is.
And that's not true. I guess there was the one adult, his creator. I forget what the character's name.
Yeah,
who
agrees to
the
marry,
wedding.
Yeah.
So I guess that's not entirely true. But anyway, I just the concept. Like I know it's stupid, but I like everyone did the wedding march, but it would be the solemn, and then it'd be dance party, solemn, dance party. I mean, I thought that was kind of cool and interesting, just to inhabit this culture and world that's a children's, motif world of what scarecrows would be, with dark Australians and all that.
Yeah.
Like that guy was going to cut you, I think.
He was. And that kid was running around stealing things, I think.
They were beating him senseless. and that's how we raised kids in the 1980s in Britain.
Beating him senseless. It was, seriously, I think this show might have scared the bejesus out of me if I'd watched it as a child. Would have had nightmares. Because it's, it's not, I was going to say it's not bright and sunshiny. And of course, it does take place in England. So I suppose to an extent,
it's cloudy
there's
and rainy.
Something to that. But yeah, it just felt quite, Well,
because even the part where the show begins, or the episode begins, where Aunt Sally's in the
washing machine, upside down.
But because his Worzel's supposed to be sort of in love with her, but he's like pretty much an ass to her. Like, I see you're stuck in the washing machine. Well, I'll get on my way now, and
I'll leave you there. But she's kind of dreadful to him,
yes,
too.
they're all dreadful.
They
I think,
are.
Yes.
This is not...
The kids seem nice enough.
The kids seem fine. Bland, at best. But yeah, because particularly we're watching The West Wing right now, and that is very... It is filmed darkly.
Yes.
The White House looks like a very dark place to work.
Sometimes. Mm-hmm.
And I suspect that Worzel Gummidge's world is a very dark place to live in. Yeah, and... When the kids are on the way to the wedding, they totally lie to the grown-ups about where they're going.
And the adults sort of just are like, well, we seem worried, but you're dressed very smartly. How can we argue? Exactly how much trouble could you be getting into?
In your fancy clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, it was such a weird experience. And I, of course, said that to you. This might be the weirdest thing you've ever watched. And
I said, look, we watched Probe.
Yeah, so fair point.
Fair point. The 80s, and I guess that was the 90s, technically. So
yeah,
maybe that's the weirdest thing of the 80s.
Delving
Probe
into
could be the weirdest thing
dark
of the 90s.
Side of Doctor Who.
So yeah, it'd be interesting if listeners, if any of you, presumably only British people, watched...
Or Kiwis.
Yeah, well, that's true. Watched Worzel, let us know if you liked it or if you just thought it was bizarre as well.
And if it gave you nightmares. I'm dying to know. I mean, don't get me wrong. We got our own sins. I mean, Teletubbies, I can't even begin to imagine would do anything other than give children nightmares. But at least it's bright.
Now you have to think of an actor who was in a thing, but then was in a children's thing afterwards, and then that was nightmarish. Well, that's what this is. So
absolutely. I'm just trying to, because you get the ones who... Morgan Freeman doing Spider-Man narration for the Electric Company.
Right.
But, yeah, afterwards.
Yeah, something to think about.
Yes, we'll mull it over.
Yeah, and it's just interesting that Jon did create this whole separate thing. So it's like, you may know me from Doctor Who, or you may know me from Worzel.
Creepy Scarecrow show.
Yeah, so he sort of had a life after the TARDIS.
Definitely.
Which, I mean, not all of them have had. I mean, everyone has done stuff. I mean... Mostly
Probe.
Yeah, I mean, like Sylvester McCoy's... I mean, he's done a bunch of stuff. I'm not trying to pigeonhole. But, like, Lord of the Rings, Peter Davison has done Law & Order UK. I mean, people have done things, but not, like, on their in the first sentence of the obit, not a lot of them have two things. Well, like Peter's, I mean, he did All Creatures Great and Small before he did Doctor Who, so maybe that's unfair. He sort of did the reverse. Had a big show and then went to another big show. But anyway, as far as the other ones, so. I mean, like, obviously...
The top of Peter's obituary is father-in-law to David Tennant. Let's be honest.
I mean, all the New Who... I'm not trying to poo-poo the classic people at all, but of course the New Who people actually will have lots of stuff. I mean, Chris Eccleston. Doctor's going to be like the last thing in Chris Eccleston's own.
Yes, it is. At his request, it may not even be included.
He sort of, like, reminds me of the Thomas Jefferson example, who, like, on his epitaph is, like, signer of the Declaration of Independence, founder of the University of Virginia, and, like, I think author of the Declaration of something of religious principles for the state of Virginia, and, like, nothing about being president,
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's going to be Christopher Eccleston. Mm-hmm. He wants naught to do with it, as twere.
Cool. Well, yeah. So, and then we sort of took a moment talking about sort of Jon Pertwee's post-TARDIS years to talk about his children.
Yes, we went from watching Worzel on YouTube to then you Googling Sherlock. Not Sherlock, Elementary.
I've never actually seen a full episode of Elementary.
I think I've seen a couple.
So,
just sort of randomly.
So, because apparently Jon Pertwee, John's son, of course, played Inspector Lestrade, which I think is interesting, having Lestrade from both, obviously, the Sherlock Holmes stories, but then Sherlock, the BBC series. So I was like, that was interesting that Sean plays Lestrade in Elementary. So I wanted to, but I couldn't find it, which I thought was slightly frustrating because we have CBS All Access, and one would think that old CBS shows would be on All Access. But I actually got a tweet from CBS All Access about it.
Oh, did you?
So, yeah.
I wondered if you would.
Yeah, because I was slightly, whatever about it. But
my husband tweeted at CBS All Access. And then they respond, due to streaming rights, some seasons or shows are no longer available.
Yeah, because I didn't know if that, because without knowing the show...
It's a very generic answer, by the way.
Yeah, because I didn't know if Elementary's, like, popular in as much as that, like, we want to sell Blu-rays and DVDs and not have it for free on All Access.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I got nothing.
That was my only thought of maybe why. Because, I don't know. I guess all stuff is made independently, but presumably if it was on CBS has some sort of stake or stock hold. I don't know. I know production's all different, but anyway.
Yeah.
One would presume they have a finger in there somewhere where they could be like, yeah.
Anyway, we skipped that and went
to where I knew him from a little bit, where I knew Jon Pertwee from, and that is, of course, Gotham. And I probably, if I was smart, I would have picked a more episode that focused on him. But I just went with the first episode of Gotham, which features Jon Pertwee introduced as Alfred.
Yes, and
Bruce
boy, he looks like his dad. Mm-hmm. Just so much.
And because I can think of at least, because I didn't watch all of Gotham, but I watched the first two seasons. There's one episode maybe in season 2 that's someone from Alfred's past comes, and there's more of an episode that way. But anyway, he has, and you would know, of course, I'm not even going to attempt to say what kind of accent he has, so you heard a little bit. But, like, he doesn't have what you would think the Alfred posh. Like, he's a little bit more...
Yeah, he's not RP at all. Yeah. A little bit more Bruiser, a little bit more South London.
Yeah, because, I mean, he sort of plays... I mean, he's Alfred, as you would think from Batman, but, like, he comes from more of a, like, I used to beat people up background.
Yes.
As well, which is what that, episode's a little bit more about, one of his old soldier buddies or whatever it was. Visit. But yeah, I think it is an interesting role for him, and of course, it's just he is obviously the spitting image of his father as well.
Yes,
he's got the Pertwee nose, but I mean, even because he's not that old, probably as old as his father was when he did Doctor Who, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, the wrinkles of even sort of very reminiscent of his dad.
The Pertwee hair.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, his
white,
is a little more disciplined. Yeah.
But it's still, You can tell, you can see the curls in it. Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny.
So yeah, it's interesting to see how that goes, because we saw the 5-ish Doctors reboot or whatever, that one we watched with and Sean was on there for 2 seconds. I think he was sitting with
Olivia Colman.
Yes, he was sitting with Olivia.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Oh okay.
She's like, I'm in everything, and he's
that.
like, yeah. So that was sort of the.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So what did you sort of think of this? Getting to know John a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I always enjoy that. I mean, you know me. I like to have random information about actors in my head. And now I feel like I have more random information about Jon Pertwee in my head. that's never a bad thing. At some point, it's going to win me a pub quiz.
Well, and as to put you on the spot, as a director, having seen Jon in 2 big roles, not all of it, of course, but like, what do you think of him as an actor? What's his sort of range, his strengths?
I mean, obviously, his strengths are certainly more comedic.
Movement.
Yeah, very much like Matt Smith, Doctor, very lanky. But I'm not sure it's difficult because even though Doctor Who, he didn't play Doctor Who as a comedic character, he's also not a character that has a tremendous amount of depth in terms of Pertwee's performance. And to be honest, in terms of most of classic Who, there's not a whole lot of angst, there's not a whole,
introspection.
Not a whole lot of introspection, not a whole lot of necessary growth, that sort of thing. The Doctor is the stable thing around which everything else rotates. And so we don't necessarily get to see much of a range with him, really. He plays someone different from the comedic roles that he has did previously and in the future with Worzel, but I'm not sure how much acting we necessarily saw. That makes sense?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for whatever reason that you see, Bill Hartnell coming from the old Sergeant, not that we're typecasting people, but that's what he was coming from before Doctor Who. And so they cast him as sort of like, I don't know, he's an old guy. He'll look smart, I guess, right, Grandpa? And then you have sort of Pat Troughton, who, I'm trying to remember but he came from a comedic background. And so definitely going for something a little bit lighter. And then you have Jon, comedic background, who they were, I guess, trying to continue. I don't know, I guess, because, the second Doctor, though comedic, is not 100% comedic by any means. And so I wonder if they thought, like, well, that's the tone of the show. Because, to bring it lighter, I don't know. I guess you could. But why would you want to? I don't think, the second Doctor was dour by any means. So
no,
I think in comparison to the first Doctor, it was certainly lighter.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
But I guess it was sort of interesting. And then to go Tom, who, I don't even know what it is. I'm sure he was doing theater work, but he certainly, I don't think, had TV work. We'll find out.
I was going to say, yes.
Considering, working on
Tune in next month, or this month,
yeah, I know.
to find out.
Considering he was on a work site when he, got the casting news.
Yeah.
So, but anyway. All right. Well, with that, we're going to go into the TARDIS library.
Whoosh, 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 whoosh.
When you close your eyes,
I go to the library.
go to the library now.
And for this week, we're going to be doing a book review, except this time it'll be me.
Yep.
So oftentimes it is you.
Yep.
Well, actually...
Don't do too many spoilers, because I am going to read it at
yes,
some point.
you had your chance, darling.
I know.
This book was in your hands.
This was my fault for a month. I know.
And I read it in a week.
I know.
A little bit less.
Yeah.
2 weeks, actually. I don't want to exaggerate. But anyway, so this was from, it's the Vesuvius Club. It is by Mark Gatiss, who we've talked about at length, of course, here. This was released in 2004, and I'm trying to find a short synopsis here. I don't know how short this is, so I'll try to...
just go look at the back of the book? Oh, those are reviews.
Thank you.
There's a little bit of something there.
It doesn't tell you anything about the book. So just very quickly here, meet Lucifer Box. Who's the main character? Sorry, Lucifer Box. Meet Lucifer Box. Lucifer has a charming countenance and a rapier wit that makes him the guest all hostesses must have. And most do. But few of his conquests know that Lucifer is also His Majesty's most daring secret agent, at home in both London's imperial grandeur and in its underworld of despicable vice. So when Britain's most prominent scientists begin turning up dead, there's only one man his country can turn to for help. Following a dinner-time assassination, Lucifer is dispatched to uncover the whereabouts of missing agent Jocelyn Poop. Yeah, this made me laugh every time I read it. Along the way, he will give art lessons, be attacked by a poisonous centipede, bed a few choice specimens, and travel to Italy on business and pleasure. There's more, but that's basically the long and short of it. So this is a very interesting book. I was trying to think of how I was going to describe this to you. This is my best shot. It's Sherlock Holmes meets James Bond.
Meets Monty Python.
It's not... It's written of the time. So, which I think is both a plus and a minus. It's basically Mark Gatiss if he wrote, it would have been like 1910 Edwardian, I guess is how they describe it, novel. I mean, it stays close to the style, but I mean, he does have a little fun with it because it reminds me, and I'm sure there's a better example than this, but like every chapter, or mostly every chapter, ends on a cliffhanger. Like, oh, and then I did this, or then this happened, and then it reminds me, I know there's better examples, but it always reminds me of Fear Street, which I read as a kid. R.L. Stein. Everything always ended with a... And I'm sure there's better examples than that. But anyway. But it's also just very... Because it's told from his point of view, and he's very full of himself. And so, is he a likable character? I'll leave that for you to decide.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that's the James Bond version. Which, by the way, now that I think about it, I've never actually, of course, read James Bond. So it would be interesting to read it. Ian Fleming. Yeah, just to be... Because I know the character's a little bit different than what you'll see on TV. Or the movies, I mean. But, just sort of the stereotypical James Bond. All those bad things.
Yes.
But he's... I couldn't help but picturing him as Mark Gatiss, read as Mark Gatiss.
Right. And Mark Gatiss we know now, not the one from Probe.
Right, exactly. And I think it works. Like, I pictured him, and to me... He fits, and maybe that's how, I don't know. I haven't read an interview with him whether he pictures himself when he's writing this as the main characters. But I'm sure some people do. Kinky actually does belong in this book.
Yeah.
Because there are some, not only assassinations, but several assignations as well.
Look at you with your wordplay. High five.
So there's definitely ones that definitely take a left turn. You're like, okay. So, anyway, that's going to happen.
Again, I didn't get very far in it before a squirrel ran by or whatever. But while it felt very sort of dime novel approach, it also felt very self-aware and sort of tongue-in-cheek in places.
Yeah, it's a big world, where, nothing's, well... Like I said, because there's a very James Bondy at the end, so it's just like every weird evil plan, that can happen in this world. So, but besides that, but it's all things are weird, but just the characters are a little bit slightly over the top, while still believable.
Yeah.
But so like there's this. So this is not a spoiler, but like there's this weird scene because again he's a secret agent, and there's this thing where he goes to talk to his sort of handler, and he sits on a toilet. And then there's like a thing where the stall comes down, and then the other guy comes out sitting on a toilet. And then he's like, oh, let's talk to this other guy. And he presses it, and then this toilet comes from the other side with the guy sitting on it. And it's just like, it's ridiculous, of course. But it's, sort of in that style.
Yes.
But, so, yeah, it's I don't know. It's good. Do I want to read 2 more books about it? I don't know. But we have 2 more books about it.
But we own 2 more books.
So I'm going to. But, so it's, I'll let you have to read it. Because I think maybe... I'd be interested how much it's, what's the word I'm looking for? How far it can go considering what it's doing. So in other words, not a lot of great women parts, at least in this book. Now, is that because of the time period? I mean, because there's some other things that may have been of the time period, but are just also very modern, which I'll explain better when you've read it.
Or is Mark Gatiss just a misogynist?
Yeah,
is that one?
Maybe that's as well. So yeah,
I don't believe that, by the way.
No. So that would just be my only thing I think of. So yeah, because like I said, but again, that's whole James Bondy again.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if
but I think Ian Fleming might have been a misogynist, so there's that.
Yeah, or at least a womanizer. I guess those are 2 different things. But anyway. So, but anyway, yeah, it's an interesting book. If you stumble upon it, or if you're looking for something that's a little bit interesting, like I said, it's a secret agent, early 20th century, late 19th century feel to it. So, yeah, it's interesting. Definitely something different from the mind of Mark Gatiss, who, you've certainly, if you're a Doctor Who fan, you've certainly enjoyed stuff that he's done. So,
yes.
Cool. And you could travel to Italy in here. Obviously, with a name like the Vesuvius Club,
there should be some time spent in Italy, yeah. I agree.
Awesome. Well, until next week, we encourage you to enjoy reading, watching, and listening to the Doctor's adventures throughout time and space.
This is BBC Television.